Is Tifa like your girlfriend?
No.
And that's all there is to it. Sure there isn't something else going on?
You okay?
All good, I think.
Still in one piece here, too.
We've got a bodyguard, don't forget. Mine.
Is it Aerith or is it Tifa?
So, who is it?
The most toxic trait of the Final Fantasy VII fandom is how it constantly likes to put these two against each other. But why is it so? The most obvious being the shipping wars. But I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. So let's go back in time. The initial concept of Final Fantasy VII included Cloud, Aerith, and Barret as the main protagonist or party members of Final Fantasy VII, and Sephiroth was the main antagonist. Aerith's personality was then eventually split into two, giving rise to Tifa Lockhart, the martial artist. Their designs were intentionally made to contrast each other, including their personalities. Aerith was written as bold, playful, and emotionally more open. Tifa, however, on the other hand, is more reserved, gentle, and guarded. So already, their character designs and their personalities are already polarizing, with Tifa appealing more to the male girls. And don't get me wrong, I do not have a problem playing an attractive woman in a video game, but I have a problem when the developers are leaning into it, and you can see that they are really leaning into it, okay?
Miss us?
Cloud? Something wrong?
No. Nothing.
The next thing is the Advent Children effect. Tifa's popularity surged with the release of Advent Children. Aerith was barely present in the movie, she was just a memory. That absence fueled the Aerith erasure, especially for new fans. She was reduced to the girl who sacrificed herself, when in truth her death was unexpected. She didn't plan to die, she was literally murdered by Sephiroth. The ambiguous family unit of Advent Children made a lot of new fans or people who were not familiar with the story of the original Final Fantasy VII see Tifa as the main love interest. So now you have introduced a new group of fans who are simply just Tifa fans and don't have any context about Aerith's importance to the Final Fantasy VII story. She is just the girl who died to them. And those who then developed an interest to actually play the original game would simply ignore Aerith, because why would you want to invest in the dead girl, right? This leads to the next point, which is Aerith's death. Aerith's death became common knowledge, so those who wanted to get into the series knew that she was already dead and decided not to invest in her character from the beginning of the game, missing the deep bond she had with Cloud and also some critical lore. I was one of those players when I first got into Final Fantasy VII. Skipping Aerith is possible in the original Final Fantasy game. This is problematic because from a dev's perspective, the intention was that Aerith's death formed part of the emotional weight and emotional core of the Final Fantasy VII franchise. So Aerith's legacy just became the girl who died, and Crisis Core didn't help either. It didn't help. Because then she just became Zack's girl.
Maybe you're not okay.
It really convoluted Aerith's personality, especially for those who did not understand her in the OG because they decided to skip her. So now we have conflicting perspectives of a character.
Shit.
This now introduces my next point, which is the remake reset. So now you have a varied amount of people coming into this franchise, and for simplicity's sake, let's say you now have those that have played the original game purely as it was, where Aerith's death came as a surprise, but these people would have either loved Aerith or Tifa or didn't really actually care for the romance. And then you get another breed of people who now have never played the original game but have watched Advent Children and played Crisis Core and have already formulated a narrative based on bias. And lastly, you get those that are just coming into the series fresh. No bias at all. And in the remake trilogy, each character's personality shines out a little bit more, especially Aerith, and it's more difficult to ignore her because she now has a lot of non-optional content. So people who ignored her or did not know a lot about her character are surprised and just try to make a lot of sense of what's going on in this game. Like, why is Cloud flirting with this girl? He is supposed to be in love with Tifa. And this is just one example that has fueled the Aerith hate.
Where the hell have you two been?
On a date, kind of.
What?
But not only are they elevating Aerith's importance, which kind of always existed, they're also elevating Tifa's importance, which you can argue that did not exist in the first two parts of the game. So Aerith is important again, but Tifa is equally important now. So the Tifa fans are now starting to realize that Aerith is important too, but so is Tifa. And then you get to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth where they're like, oop, maybe she's a little bit too important. She's becoming too much in my face.
It totally screams climb me, doesn't it?
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
This is just my personal take. No hate or shade. But I feel like the Tifa parts are really just fillers. In Remake, she's the tutorial section. In Rebirth, she has the Gongaga section that never existed in the original game and does not really impact the main story. And it's really like a very good financial decision when you think about it, especially from a merch perspective overall. But it does feed into the fandom division, as people now often compare like who got the better dress, who got the better date, who got the better this and that. Okay, so she's optional, this one's canon, yeah. And not to mention, I believe that it has muddled the original narrative balance. The original game was never meant to be about choosing one girl. It was about how both women impacted Cloud's journey and how their bond mattered too. And that introduces my next point, which is from rivals to complementary heroines. The friendship rewrite. Their dynamic was rewritten. In the original Final Fantasy game, it is known that they were love rivals. They were not besties. Many people might love the fact that they are making them this bestie girls female duo, but I personally feel like female friendships are highly complex, especially if you love the same guy. So in my point of view, it feels very unrealistic.
Yeah.
Let's roll.
Like, okay. I think the jealousy that Tifa showed towards Aerith was a bit more realistic and it added layers to her character. Tifa is a woman just like any woman in their 20s navigating complex emotions. And we know that she struggles with insecurities, especially around Cloud. So it really just humanizes her. And her feeling a little bit more inadequate to Aerith also mirrors Cloud feeling inadequate for Tifa. So it just makes things a little bit more interesting, but people don't want interesting. And making Aerith just seem like this girl that's very clueless about Tifa's emotions towards Cloud can make her feel kind of emotionally detached. And she's a Cetra, so she's supposed to have a very good perception of things. I just believe that the way they navigate their feelings towards Cloud should have been more explicit and not really just shucked under the rug. That is one inconsistency that I see in Aerith's writing, and I really think it's done intentionally because the developers just want to keep this lifetime debate going and therefore sacrificing emotional clarity for fan service sake. Also, compromises a lot of things about the Cloud character as it turns him more into a passive protagonist. A love triangle needs choices, it needs action. When the story keeps everything ambiguous, Cloud never has his own feelings. And these choices that are not definitive makes Cloud come off as a emotionally neutral character, simply a placeholder for projection. I guess with all the evidence that I've presented, we can agree that the ambiguity is a big part of why we have the Tifa versus Aerith wars. But the main question is this hurting the game? From a story point of view, yes, it is. And from all the evidence I've seen online, yes, it is hurting the game. Next question is, does Square Enix care that it is hurting the game? I think Square Enix cares more about the numbers than they do care about closing this ambiguity. I think ambiguity has a place, and Final Fantasy VII on its own was perfect. It is the additions, the other compilations that came in that confused a lot of people on what the story actually was. I hope that this model of satisfy everyone instead of telling the story that needs to be told won't be applied to part 3 of this trilogy, because the heart of Final Fantasy VII is going to be lost, and new generations are not going to go and pick up the original game. They are going to go pick up the remake trilogy. Yeah,